You've felt it before, even if you never had a name for it. A coworker laughs a little too loud right before they ask you a favor. Someone apologizes for texting you back late, even though you never said a word about it. In both moments, someone just decided, in a few seconds, that you're someone they need to manage carefully around. Not someone dangerous, just someone they can't fully relax with. For a certain kind of person, calm, self-possessed, quietly capable, that verdict keeps coming back the same way, even when everything inside them is gentler than anyone assumes. So let's talk about it, because nobody else will. Being unreadable and being unkind are not the same thing, wearing different clothes. Most people who make others tense without trying are the last to notice, because from the inside it never feels like control. It feels like just existing. Here are 6 ordinary habits that get mistranslated into proceed with caution, aimed at people who never asked to be approached that way. 1. You don't narrate your reactions. Most people give a running commentary of little nods, small mms, raised eyebrows, just to signal they're following along. It's social bookkeeping, mostly unconscious. If you don't do it, if you just listen and let your face stay still until you actually have something to say, people fill that silence with a guess. And the guess is rarely they're just listening carefully. It's usually they disagree or they're bored. Your stillness gets read as a verdict when it was never anything but attention. 2. You finish your sentences and stop. Some people trail off, add a little laugh, soften the ending so it doesn't land too hard. You might just say the thing and stop talking. That's not coldness, that's clarity. But a sentence with no cushion around it can feel like a door closing to someone who's used to padding. They're not reacting to what you said. They're reacting to the shape it came in. 3. You don't perform being impressed. When something's good, you might just say that's good, instead of a whole production of enthusiasm. To you, that's honesty. To someone still figuring out where they stand with you, low-key praise reads as barely their praise, and they start working harder for a reaction you weren't withholding in the first place. 4. You ask questions instead of offering reassurance first. Some people lead every response with no, totally, I get it, before they even know what they think. You might just ask a clarifying question instead. It's not judgment, it's how you actually process things. But to someone braced for approval, a question can feel like an audit. 5. You don't fill your own silences with self-deprecation. A lot of people undercut themselves automatically, a joke at their own expense to seem less threatening. You might not do that, not out of arrogance, just because it wouldn't be true. In a room that's used to people making themselves smaller doesn't always know what to do with someone who doesn't. 6. You recover fast, and that's the part people can't parse. When something goes wrong, you regroup quickly and move on. To you, that's just how you're wired. To someone watching, it can look like nothing touched you at all, which is its own kind of intimidating, because they're used to measuring how much something mattered by how long the reaction lasts. If a few of these sounded familiar, here's the part that matters. None of this means you're hard to be close to. It means you're being read by people using instruments built for a different kind of person, someone who needs to visibly soften to be trusted. You were never built to run on that setting, and that's not a flaw. It's just a different frequency, one that takes longer to tune into. The people who are actually worth your time figure that out fast. They stop weighing your silence against their own nervous habits. They start reading you on your terms instead of theirs. And something shifts, quietly, without anyone announcing it. The room stops bracing when you walk in, because they've recalibrated the instrument, not you. Your stillness stops looking like a verdict and starts looking like trust. The two of you find a pace that doesn't require performing anything. The static clears, and what's underneath was steady the whole time. They stop hesitating before they knock. You don't have to change the way you speak or hold your face. The room just catches up to who you already were. It takes patience, but it was never actually complicated. Somewhere in there, the laugh becomes real instead of nervous. And you realize you weren't the reason it felt hard. You were just early for a conversation everyone else needed more time to have. The runway was always longer for some people than others. That was never a flaw in you. It's just proof that the good ones stay long enough to see clearly. The ones who leave after 4 seconds were never going to stay for the version underneath anyway. Consistency does more convincing than any performance could. So if a room's ever gone quiet when you walked in, it was probably never a verdict on your character. It was just someone's nervous system doing the math a little slower than yours. And the ones who wait for the answer are usually the ones worth knowing. You don't owe anyone a softer face to prove you're safe. The right people were never going to need the performance. They just needed the real thing on its own time. There's a version of confidence that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't fill silence just to be comfortable. It doesn't perform warmth it isn't feeling in the moment. It just waits, steady, for the right person to sit down across from it. And when they do, they don't need convincing anymore. The uncertainty they walked in with settles on its own. Because proximity does what explanation never could. You don't have to defend a resting face or a slow smile. You just have to let people stay long enough to see past it. The ones who do usually don't leave again. They start speaking to you plainly, the way you speak to them. The eye contact stops feeling like a test for either of you. The hallway that used to feel long gets shorter every time. Two people who read each other correctly don't need much else. You start writing things down not to prove a point, but because clarity is just how your mind works. And that plainness stops looking like distance to the people who know you now. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard in a room like that. Reliability speaks louder than charm ever does, over enough time. The exhale comes easier when you're not bracing to be misread. The table fills up, and for once, no one's performing for it. Steadiness stops feeling like something you have to justify. A nod means the same thing to both of you now. The smile that comes back isn't nervous anymore. It's just familiar. Somewhere between the 5th conversation and the 50th, the color changes. Your calm under pressure stops reading as detachment. It starts reading as exactly what it always was, steadiness. You don't perform ease. You just have it now, in that company. The people who stayed walk at your pace instead of asking you to match theirs. The door that used to look closed was just waiting for the right knock. And you're the one who finally stopped bracing for it to stay shut. By now the hallway from the very beginning doesn't feel like the same place. Not because it changed, but because you're not walking through it braced anymore. The stillness that used to get misread just gets recognized now. Consistency, it turns out, was the whole argument all along. You didn't need to change anything about how you show up. You just needed people willing to stay past the first 4 seconds. The ones who did are still here. And if you're watching this and it sounded familiar, the room that used to go quiet when you walked in wasn't rejecting you. It was just catching up, the way rooms do. The people worth keeping never needed you to perform anything different. They just needed the time most people don't bother giving. And once they gave it, they got the real version, which was always the better one. So the next time a room hesitates around you, remember it's rarely about who you are. It's about how long it takes someone else to catch up to it. You were never the hard one to read. You were just read by people using the wrong instrument. The right ones were never confused for long. And they're the only opinions that were ever going to matter anyway. If this resonated, it might be because you process more than you let on, which usually means your mind doesn't switch off as easily as everyone else's does. That's exactly what the guide linked below is built for, structured steps instead of more noise. It's pinned in the comments if you want to take a closer look. And if you're still here, go ahead and subscribe. There's more of this coming.